Welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast. This is Keiko Price, Director of Athletics and Recreation at Emory University. I believe leaders should be transparent, bold, decisive, and empathetic. As a leader, if you are able to demonstrate these qualities, you won't have a problem rallying and inspiring others to join you on the journey towards success. I can say that the NCAA Pathway program was extremely useful in helping me think through not only the qualities I want to have as a leader, but also the values I need to stay grounded as a leader. There isn't a day that goes by when I am not tested by situations in the chair that require me to apply my values to the decision-making process. Thank you, NCAA Pathway program.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown, and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast, where we highlight executive and organizational leadership. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at 1Q Leadership. Our guest today is Angie Torain. Angie is the Director of Athletics and Recreation at University of Chicago. Greetings, Angie. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, thank you.
Now, you've been there for 3 years, right, at Chicago, hired during the pandemic when Aaron left and took over at Harvard.
Yes.
Prior to, you spent time at Notre Dame, University of the Incarnate Word, and IUPUI, right? With over 20 years in the industry. So that's a wealth of experience, knowledge, experiencing leadership and being a leader in terms of college athletics and in terms of working with people. You also got your JD, Juris Degree, not a practicing lawyer, but educated in law.
Yes.
So right from law school, you went immediately start working in college athletics. Tell me about that decision. Like, did you start law school wanting to take the bar and be a lawyer, or did you start law school saying this is going to help me in college athletics? Like, what was the decision there?
No, I went to law school with the thought process that I was going to take the bar, be a practicing lawyer, but definitely on the sports side. So
Okay.
I was looking at being an agent or working in sports and entertainment law. During that time, though, I went to IU Bloomington and ended up moving to Indianapolis, and there weren't very many law firms doing sports and entertainment law at that time. So it was kind of like, okay, what am I going to do? And I was lucky enough to get my first job working at a conference office. And so I went in, it's now the Horizon League. It was the MCC back in the day. And so I spent time there, and then I just grew in that space and realized, like, this is what I wanted. This is really what I was wanting to do, but didn't even know it was out there.
Right. Okay. That's excellent. And so you start working in the industry, and were you drawing upon the way law school teaches you how to think as you were working? Hopefully I phrased that right.
Yeah, no, you did. I did, because I, of course, ended up in compliance. So as I'm looking at how do I translate what I've learned in in law school to college athletics, compliance was that natural fit, right? You're interpreting rules, you're writing proposals, you're thinking about governance, you're arguing cases, you're trying to find that, how to get as close to the line as you can without getting in trouble. And so luckily I had that opportunity that felt similar to what I had learned in law school. And then I eventually moved to the NCAA and was doing enforcement. So really, which was really that type of, law background. But then as I moved in my career, I started using more of the contract perspective. So using contract, using HR, rules, learning those, Title IX, and just trying, again, use those skills of reading and interpreting and writing to help broaden my experience in college athletics.
Yeah, which is important. I was looking at the title of your previous role at Notre Dame, right? It was like engagement, inclusion. Tell me about that role that you were in at Notre Dame.
Yeah, so I was and we'll get to this a little bit, but when you talk about leadership, like the University of Notre Dame was probably the one place that I truly learned about leadership through being invested in as well as watching others. And so I started there as an associate AD for HR, risk risk management, legal risk management. So handling all their in-house legal things. And then it transferred into me taking over a compliance position. So actually becoming the senior associate AD for compliance, still risk management and legal. But then you have George Floyd happen, right? And so, like many institutions across the nation or country or whatever, we're talking about what are we gonna do, right? We have our athletes who are finally speaking out of what they need. You have staff members of color speaking out, and so me and some of my team members just truly organized the space for the athletes to have conversations and for staff to have conversations, for us all to come together, and then it started to work into program. So then the conversation became, if this is going to be seen as important to the department and the university, we need someone to kind of lead us in this space.
Right.
Now, although I was, that's where I wanted to be. I did not want to lead it. Like, that's not my expertise. I know how, what my life is as a Black female, but I can't speak for for everyone or whatever. But I took on the role in order to help us move forward and show that we were truly going to be intentional and that this was truly important to the department.
Which was excellent. How did you address the learning curve in terms of taking the lead role in that?
It was more so of reaching out to, and I cannot remember. She's going to kill me. I cannot remember her name, but she was at Wisconsin. But actually, just reaching out to folks in the industry that were doing this and working with them to help me think about what our program should look like, what our planning should look like. I had a few months into that role, and then I got this role. So now they have, JP is there, and she's killing the game. So it was nice to be able to at least set the foundation for her. But yeah, it was using others. It was using the ACC, because the ACC had put together diversity and diversity committee. And so it was just using everybody who was out there talking about this and trying to be intentional about it. So that kind of helped from that perspective. But what I really wanted to do was leave a framework for Notre Dame to continue to move forward.
And forgive me if you said this already, all the old responsibilities you just left and just, you know what I mean? Like when they reassigned you, were you just reassigned completely and didn't have to do any of that stuff, or that was on top of?
So the risk management piece was reassigned, but
Okay.
I kept compliance,
Okay.
overseeing compliance and some of the legal, but the risk management piece was removed. And that was by choice for me too, because I had to look out for myself with what I still wanted to have my hand in, because I knew this wasn't a space that I wanted to move into permanently.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
I wanted to set it up for someone else to be successful in. So I wasn't giving up too much. And although it was offered, right? Like, you could do this all, or you tell me what you need to give up in order to be able to do both. And I wasn't giving up too much.
So there are I'm going to ask this question, and then I want to go back to your experience at Notre Dame in terms of leadership. Yeah. But there are a lot of women who come through college athletics through compliance, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't think I'm stretching by saying that. So when you get to the athletics director chair, are you still a compliance person, or do you just know that compliance is of the utmost importance and understand how it works, but that's not taking up most of the bullet points in your brain?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. Like, it's still on my mind, and it's still of the utmost importance to the department. And so I think for me, it's easier in my role to make sure people understand that compliance is important to me.
Okay.
I don't have to be like, it's over there. Maybe no, compliance is important to what we do. Integrity is important to what we do. Sometimes it could be troublesome from the compliance person's side, because you're like, hey, I remember this rule. Is that saying, is that right. the same rule? Whatever, but trying to keep making sure I stay out of that space and allow them to do that work. I don't even want to be in that space, right? Like, I'm like, here. But I think it's beneficial, because when people do ask me questions, I can say, you might want to check with compliance with that, because the rule may have changed, but I remember something that we could do, or just the importance of that role. So yeah, I don't try to get in the weeds with it, but it does stay in the forefront.
Okay, excellent. Now what I know about Jack Swarbrick I know for sure you and Jill Bodensteiner are two athletic directors that came out of the Jack Schwarbrick tree, if you would. I don't know if there are others. I'm sure you'll tell me if there are, but tell me about what prepared you to be an athletic director, and then what are the key leadership points that you have taken with you from working at Notre Dame. And I ask this because you said that was one of the
Yeah.
pivotal leadership experiences that helped you to understand leadership better.
Yeah. To the first question about working with Jack and what I learned from him, um, amazing mentor but a very quiet mentor. Like the man is brilliant, and so um, he's not just outgoing that you just feel like you can just run up to and start talking to him. But when you're in a room with him one on one, it's amazing what you learn and what he pulls out of you. And so, for two of the things that I remember from working with Jack is don't be afraid to fail, right? Like, you make the decision. If you send me an email and I don't respond, that's because I want you to make the decision. Make the decision and be prepared to tell me why you made the decision. Now, there may be some repercussions that we have to, work around or whatever, but make the decision. So I felt like he gave his leadership team a lot of control to kind of run the department, which also fed into me
Yeah.
being able to lead my department. I think the other thing was always, I just remember feeling and hearing like, we want to be the first to do. We don't want to be reacting to things. We want to determine our course and what we're going to do. And sometimes that's hard, right? Like we'd be in meetings for feel like days, just talking the what ifs and how, but it was a good exercise for your brain. And I think that's why Notre Dame was so successful or continued to be successful underneath his guidance. And so I've kind of taken that here. I brought that here with me. I'm trying to help, D3, you don't have very many who are being sport administrators and that are leading departments. Like you normally got one person and they doing everything. And I've been blessed here where I've had an opportunity to grow our staff a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so allow them. And so I'm trying to teach them how to be leaders in their space. They don't need me for everything, but also give them sport administrator responsibility so they can learn about coaches. They can learn about, why they do what they do. So that's one thing.
Okay.
And then as far as leadership that I learned from Notre Dame, it's about investing in people, right? Like it's not, I went through a program there, a year-long program at Notre Dame that was a mixture of athletics and the campus as a whole, and building those relationships with people across campus, how important that is, and them understanding about athletics and understanding you. But a lot was about how to build up your team and how to work with your team. And, just different ideas of how you should conduct meetings, and how you should let others lead.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not always about me being the leader, but how am I putting my people in the space where they can lead and they
Right.
can feel confident that they're growing and moving forward.
Yeah, which is excellent. What I wonder about is you mentioned that Jack would, not respond to an email, make that decision, and we'll figure out whether or not it was a good decision afterwards. What was the framework that you learned prior to Notre Dame and then at Notre Dame for making decisions? Like, is that something that was trained while you were there? Is that something based upon all your experiences? And then a follow-up to that is, what is the framework that you're providing for the people you've brought on there at Chicago to help
Yeah.
them to make good decisions?
Yeah. Well, I think when you're making decisions, a lot of it is kind of your personal
Mhm.
experiences as well as where your confidence level is with making those decisions. I think early on in my career, I wanted to be like, ugh, is this okay? This is what I'm thinking. But, as people give you a little bit more rein, you start to have more you have more confidence in making those decisions. And also setting what your values are and what you're trying to get at, right? And so we, at Notre Dame, we had like, 4 pillars or whatever that, and so you're always trying to go back and say, okay, is it fitting one of these things, right? And so that's where we are here. Like for here at U Chicago, everything is about the student athlete experience, right? Everything is about resources and engaging our coaches and helping our coaches be successful. So what we're doing how is it going to affect what we're trying to do? And I think for my staff though, when I talk about them leading their own areas, I also have to help them think about the bigger picture.
Okay.
So when we're making decisions, how's that going to affect us? How's that affect the department? Yes, it may affect your baseball program this way, but how does it affect everybody, right? And you mentioned recreation or whatever. Sometimes our conversations and our decision makings affect recreation. Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? We're very limited in space here, and so it's a constant conversation. It's a constant pool, and so again, I try to give the framework. We just completed or at the end of a strategic plan now where we have 3 or 4 pillars of excellence and engagement and experience. So now we're going to use those things when helping us try to make the decisions as to, is this something we should be doing or not doing?
Yeah.
So.
Which is excellent. The people you hired, I mean, I this is my assumption that when you hired them, you didn't purposely not respond to emails so they can make their own decision, right? I mean, there had to be this training
Correct.
process. Tell me about the onboarding process of getting to understand that, hey, we are athletics, but we are part of a bigger campus-wide situation here, and student athletes are our primary focus. Tell me about that kind of onboarding to help someone understand the thought process of how we make decisions here in this department. Yeah.
Well, Ty, that to be honest, that comes during the interview process.
Okay.
Like, I am very open about what U Chicago is and what our challenges are, because I don't want anybody to come here and be like, you didn't even tell me that, right? Like, so I try to be, not to scare people away, but I try to be as honest as I can of where we're trying to go, what our challenges are, and what I expect of them, right? And so from an onboarding, so people have a sense of that before they even get here. But then once they are here, it's very important for us to spend the time. Well, for me to spend time with them automatically. We're meeting weekly, right? Like, what do you need? How do I, do you need something from the old files? What is it you need? So my access to them is pretty open when they first get here, so that they feel comfortable talking to me, and then we just kind of move from there. And I say up front, like, I am not a hands-on leader or director. I'm like, my job is to give you the resources to do your job. I hired you because I trusted you to do a job, and just don't give me any surprises. So
Yeah.
if you think it's something where I'm going to hear from an athlete or I'm going to hear from a parent, then we probably need to be talking. That's not one that you just be like, so.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I thought I heard you mention you had established the 4 pillars or 4 values there at University of Chicago.
Mhm.
Are those are the things that you established in the 3 years you've been there, or did they exist, or were they tied to what existed before? Tell me about that process of those.
Yeah. So they kind of they're tied to what we already believe in about ourselves or whatever, but now we've taken them and added some goals and some direction for us. And so now we've taken those and we've kind of narrowed them down to 3, and then have set goals underneath them that we want to try to attain. But it's a living document, so it's not like a 10-year strategic plan. These are our priorities, right? It's excellence. We have excellence, engagement, and then experience. Those are our priorities. So what are we doing every day to touch those priorities, which are part of, when you look at our website, of who we are and what we try to strive for.
Are they a part of I guess there's overarching core values for the department. What are those core values, and then how do the priorities fit within the core values?
Yes. So we focus on excellence, education, integrity, and then what we call all in. And so then our priorities, or our kind of pillars that we call them, are, again, excellence, engagement, and experience.
Okay. Were those core values, did those exist already? And then you introduced the priorities, because you said you expanded a little on what already existed, right?
Yes. The excellence, education, integrity, all in had already existed. And it's so well embedded into this program that
Mhm.
I didn't feel the need to have to change that. But I wanted to give us a little bit more of direction in
Okay.
using those as part of our priorities.
Their priorities. Okay. So then making a decision, right? Core values are kind of the guiding foundational principles, but then we have to this is how we're prioritizing whatever this decision entails within those core values. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Excellent. And then I imagine there are there specific goals, like now you start getting into strategic planning and stuff like are
Yes.
there specific goals that you want to execute that fit into each one of the core values under each priority? Like how many sub bullet points and down triangles are there when you talk about?
Yeah, so it's like 3 pages of them, but we were intentional about trying to remember, like, you cannot do everything.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
try our best to only put at the most 3 goals under
Right.
one of those,
Yeah.
one of those areas, right? We know this is a living document. We're gonna come back to it or whatever, so we don't have to put everything in it, right now. So we were very intentional about trying to make them reachable, that made sense, and so now we do have some long term goals on there that are will continue to roll in them or whatever, but out of those, 3 or 4 core values, we've tried to put that bucket of excellence, engagement, and academic and experience. And so you're touching on a couple of goals in those spaces. So to give you an example, like I'll just say, like for excellence, right? We have a competitive excellence piece. Well, there are standards that we want our coaches to meet, whether it's be top 4 UAA. Those are things that I can measure throughout, and we can all measure, each season. And then, okay, you're not meeting it. Then what do we need to do to hit those?
Okay.
From an experience standpoint, we've grown. We have over 500 athletes.
Mm-hmm.
Our locker rooms can't accommodate some of our sports that continue to get bigger. So one of our goals is to go back, revision what our locker room situation looks like, and how do we now try to brand them and make them make sense and feel like a space for our athletes. So there's some facility stuff, there's some academic stuff. We talked about connecting to campus. That's something that we can do a lot better on, right? So we have goals on how do we connect to faculty better? How do we connect to, staff on campus better and help them understand our story and what our athletes are doing?
Is there So, okay, I don't know if you've listened to any of my interviews, whether it be on athletic director or one question, but like my brain gets hit with 3 questions at a time, and one will be relevant to what you're talking about, then one will be two
Right.
questions down. So I'll try to hold on to them. How many student athletes were there when you started? Because you said you're at around 500 now, and you said you've grown. Right.
Yeah, that's about what we have now. It was 500 when I started,
Okay.
but we just recently, like 4 years ago, added another sport.
Oh,
So
okay. So they're
4 or 5 years
relatively
we
new.
added with
Right.
sports. Yeah. So
So,
we're 20 sports.
right. So then you talk about what you mentioned about locker rooms or facilities. And are these things that you have to talk to campus about? Like, okay, so, we've added a sport, which is probably 40 to 50 something athletes. We have 200 locker. I mean, like,
Yeah,
tell me about the conversations you had to have and helping explain why you needed to hire staff, A, and then
right.
B, now that we've added sports in the last 5 years, we need to make sure our facilities match the number of student athletes we have. Tell me about that conversation with the greater campus.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. So the women's lacrosse was added before I got here, but
Mhm.
I constantly get questions about why don't we have fencing, or why don't we have golf, or why don't we have water polo? And so when those conversations come to me, I have to speak with my boss, and those are the conversations that we're having. We're like,
Mhm.
okay, we have 500 athletes now. We have 2 facilities that belongs to varsity athletics, sports and intramural, clubs,
Mhm.
staff, faculty. We're already busting at the seam. So if we add this sport, how does it become a varsity sport? How does it feel like a varsity sport when we don't have locker rooms or when we don't have a space for them to practice? So if we're going to make that move, which I'm all for, I don't want to do it if it can't be done properly,
Yeah.
right? If they
Right.
can't come and feel like a varsity sport, it can't be just added as another sports club. And so, of course, what my boss is going to say is, well, go look and see where you can find find the space if it's something that we truly want. But um, we've had those conversations about what does it look like to do this. And, for golf, we're in Chicago, like where would you play? You got weather issues, so I think there's an understanding that right now we're pretty landlocked. But from what we're trying to do with the current spaces we have enough spaces where we can redo some things with the locker room where I really wouldn't need her assistance with, because I'm not knocking down walls. I'm not, it's within my budget, it's within our preview of what we already have. Now, if I have to take one of the swimming pool locker rooms that's going to affect the staff of faculty,
Mm-hmm.
I need to have a conversation with her about that. So she's prepared and knows and understands why I'm doing that.
Okay, got it. Excellent. So one of the questions that interjected in my brain as I was asking the last question is relative to you saying that as a department you can do better with engaging faculty and staff on campus. Now, the question I have relative to that is, can the part of your title that says recreation, could that be a catalyst to engage that part of campus, because they may or may not use the facilities for their recreation, and somehow, since I don't know if you're over that area too, since it's in your title, could that be something that you use to engage faculty and staff and basically general student population with recreation?
Yes, definitely. I think we could do a little better with advertising what we offer from a recreation and club perspective. But we have good numbers. Like
Good
it's
usage,
very
right?
interesting for this place to be very academic. Like fitness is very important to these kids, to the staff, the faculty.
And they can exist together, right? Fitness and academics.
Yes, exactly. Exactly,
Yeah.
right. But I think from a engaging standpoint, it's more from the varsity side,
Okay.
helping those faculty understand what these athletes go through with traveling and practice and things like that when it comes to not being able to maybe enroll in a class because you're going to miss the very first day, or the fact that we're on the quarter system. So most of the time when our kids are competing during the postseason, we're in finals. So sometimes professors understand and will let a coach proctor, sometimes they won't, right? So I think for us to better tell our story and engage faculty here so they understand, and coming here, they'll understand that we have recreation as well, but also that we have varsity athletics. We'll still get like, y'all have football from our own campus,
Yeah.
right? Yes,
Wow.
we do.
Oh, interesting. And so I imagine, and for you to bring it up on the podcast, I mean, that's an ongoing dilemma that you're trying to figure out, is help them understand what we do here at Athletics better. And I also imagine that there are other schools that you can probably lean on. I recently interviewed the president at University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, and he talked about how athletics is leading the way in terms of retention on the rest of campus. Right? What do we have in place in athletics? What is there about athletics that keeps, like, for example, a Black male coming back for his sophomore year, junior year, and senior year? And he's like, well, they did a research to figure out what those things were. Okay, now let's apply those things to general campus so that on campus they understand how important what athletics brings, but then also how we can use those type of aspects to keep the general student body here and work with our retention rate. So I imagine, like you mentioned, telling the story is probably the first and foremost thing that a lot of the professors and staff there need to understand about. Hey, I don't know if it's true at Chicago, but most college campuses, our athletes probably have better grades than the general student body.
No, we do. Our GPA, we have our GPA. Our team GPA is like a 3.6, so it's higher than the student body. And it's amazing. Like, considering everything they have to do on a daily basis, that they're smarter than I am.
All right, exactly. Yeah, that's super interesting. Okay, I'll ask a couple questions and then we'll wrap. Thinking about the staff that you brought on, right? How many people have you added since getting there 3 years ago?
Oh my goodness. Let's see. I have deputy financial person, assistant communications person, an additional tennis coach now. Five. 5 new positions.
Okay. And
5 new positions. Yes, 5 new.
I imagine the responsibilities existed with before the 5 people got there. So they were just on your plate or just on the rest of the people in the department's plate. We got to handle these things. And so let's do it.
Yeah, they were on, and she was amazing and did an amazing job. She, Rosie Rush, who retired
Mm-hmm.
last year, was former athlete, student athlete at U Chicago, coach, staff member here, 40 years, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
She did all that.
She did
She
everything.
did a lot
Wow.
of it or whatever, other than like the coaching piece and the communications piece or whatever. But yeah, so it was really on other staff members to try to figure out and handle, along with other duties.
Did you bring like the 5 people I imagine were over the 3 years? I mean, it wasn't like just last year you hired 5 people, was it?
No, no,
Okay.
it was over the 3 years. Yeah.
So when you bring somebody on for a new position and you are taking responsibilities off of other people's plates so that this position can exist, was there any pushback for that or any worry about, is my job still secure, or am I still going to be, is my value still there? You still going to pay me? Am I losing salary because now you're taking responsibility? Tell me about that aspect, because that's a leadership
Yeah.
thing that you got to manage too, right?
Yeah, I was lucky in the fact that so when our SWA who retired was here,
Mm-hmm.
most of those roles were roles that she was doing.
Okay.
So had she still been on, she was okay with giving up
Oh, okay. Yeah.
some things,
Right.
right? Because it was getting to be too much for her. And then in the end, she just decided, you know what, it's time for me to just
Yeah.
go
Time,
ahead and
yeah.
step away. So I was able to split her position into two. And then one position was a newly created position. And I actually had a assistant swimming coach who wanted to get into administration, had did this work before. It's in student athlete development. We didn't have a student athlete development space.
Okay.
And so anytime we wanted to do something, it was like, well, who's got space to do it or who can do it. And a lot of time things just fell to the leeway because you just didn't have the people to do it. So that student athlete development position was a new position, but I was able to move someone in house into that, and it's been amazing. We split tennis coach. We had one tennis coach who was doing both. He was at that point too, where he was like, "Yeah, I just want to focus on one." And so I didn't have much. I didn't have pushback. I wouldn't say I didn't have pushback or concern. It was just more so of, well, what are these people going to do?
Oh, yeah.
Right. So they were so used to one person doing these items or not doing these items that when I'm bringing in more people, they will in their head, well, one person was doing this. So what are these people going to do? And some of it did relieve me because a lot of the staff were reporting to me. And so being able to hire a deputy and putting a couple of departments underneath her freed me up so that I can do higher level things.
Is creating new positions and hiring staff at the athletics department at U Chicago, is it like corporate where you have to ask for more budget, or did they say if you raise the money, you can spend it on whatever you want? Like, tell me how that worked in terms of financing new staff members.
Yeah, see, I was lucky. I think one thing for all ADs, when you get in, you better ask for everything you need when you first get in, because
Yeah.
ain't no going back to the well. Like
All right.
I cannot go back to the well, and I'm forever telling my boss, thank you,
Mm-hmm.
thank you, thank you, thank you. Like I truly did spend those first 90 days or whatever looking around this department and thinking about what I wanted to advance and being intentional about the positions that I asked for. And so I was lucky that I was able to get the budget for these positions or
Oh,
whatever.
okay. You got them ahead of time. Yeah.
And again, taking one position and kind of splitting it or whatever. There was already some dollars there or whatever, and finding savings. Like I was very intentional about like not trying to I didn't come in with high salaries, right? Like because then I knew that was going to be shut down. But I had to give a rationale and justification of why I wanted these positions. And luckily, my boss believed in me, believed in what I was asking for, and saw the need and allowed me to do that from that standpoint.
So after that, listening tours, what they like to call it, that first 90 days, you identify these are the needs. And then over the 5 years, the needs have been fulfilled in terms of what you needed.
Yeah.
That's super interesting. because you want to continue growing. So now,
Yeah.
when can you identify some more needs?
I know, right? Right. No, it's we have plenty of needs. Hi, we
All
have
right.
plenty of needs. So I have to like you to, have to be very strategic, about them and to that, to that notion, there are times too where I have to kind of tame myself and just kind of remember where I am and what I have been able to get because I see where I want us to be and what I want us to do. But that takes money, that takes time, that takes buy-in. And so sometimes I have to like calm down.
Yeah,
You're doing good things. You're making a difference. So yeah.
that's interesting. Okay, last question.
Yeah.
I wonder, and it stems from you said, bringing in more staff allows you to focus on higher level things. I wonder what you spend most of your time on in the role that you're in, right?
Staff.
Really? Just like staff development, leadership development?
um no, I think it's more so, yeah, I would say kind of that leadership development or
Mhm.
just trying to make sure that people let me see, how do I say this?
Yeah, it'd be nice when you say it too.
I
Right?
know, right? It's it is development
Hmm.
of people, but you do spend a lot of time with people's wants,
Okay.
right? And trying to help them understand, is it a want, is a need? Um, and then you put the athlete piece in there as well, right? So then there's some conversations about maybe issues with athletes or um, or culture in your program and
Hmm.
things like that. So I'm hoping though, with the sport administrator model, that some of that can not be pushed, but allow some opportunities for my sport administrators now. But the concept is still so new because now that my staff is in place, we just put this in place recently, so everybody still kind of comes to me right now
Okay.
for those conversations. But I spend a lot of time um, on staff leadership, trying to keep them focused, being available for them, but then fundraising too. So
Oh yeah.
that's a piece that had I not had the staff, I did not have time to do. I
Yeah.
did not have time to focus on. And so this is my first year actually being able to go out on the road and meet donors and have conversations and truly have some thought about what I want
Hmm.
our stewardship to look like. I didn't have that time in my first 2 years.
Super interesting. And you're raising funds for athletics and recreation?
Yes, yes, yes,
Oh
yes.
wow. Okay. Excellent. Well, Angie, it sounds to me like Chicago hired a great person in 3 years
Oh,
ago, and it sounds like the evolution of the department. I imagine that the student athletes that are there, or even the faculty and staff that understand the importance of athletics, probably see it and appreciate it for what it does for the university. And I really appreciate you joining me here on the One Question Leadership podcast.
thank you for having me. It was fun. You have some enlightening questions.
I appreciate that. That was Angie Torain. Angie is the Director of Athletics and Recreation at University of Chicago. And of course, I am Ty Brown with one question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of the One Question Leadership podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.